who was blind and mute. And when healed by the Lord Christ, the Pharisees accused Jesus, saying, "This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons." But Jesus replied, "Every city or house divided against itself will not stand." I think we spoke about this topic before, and let me explain to you again the meaning of a house divided against itself. If a family whose members are living in the same house, and then they divided against each other, this house is meant for devastation and desolation. It's going to be destroyed and it's going to be deserted. But why should a house ever face this painful destiny? Let us learn from the Holy Bible. In the Old Testament, we have 3 examples about houses that were divided because of so many reasons. The first house ever found on earth, the house of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had 2 sons. One of them was called Cain and the other was called Abel. Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, and each one of them brought an offering to the Lord. But when the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering, Cain, out of jealousy, was very angry, to the extent that he ended up killing his only brother. So this is the first reason why our homes and houses can be divided, for the sake of jealousy. And for the same reason, if you can remember, Jacob's sons, the olders from his wife Leah, they hated their brother Joseph. They hated Joseph out of jealousy, to the extent that they threw him into a dry pit and then eventually sold him as a slave in the land of Egypt. Let me ask you, or let me ask myself, how do I feel when my brother, sister, or a friend gets a new apparel, gets a new game, or probably a new electronic device, a new cell phone? How do I feel when a friend of mine gets a better credit or high score at school? Do I, just as the book commanded, rejoice with those who rejoice? Or rather feel angry and hold my jealousy and anger until the time comes that I can reveal all this, that I can take a revenge out of this friend or sibling? I think we need all to ask ourselves this very important question: am I jealous or not? Or do I behave or follow the commandment of the book, who said, rejoice with those who rejoice, or not? So this is the first thing, or the first reason for a house to be divided. Number 1 is, yes? Number 1 is jealousy. Exactly. Just as Cain was jealous from Abel. Another house that was in the book of Genesis again is the house of Abraham. Abraham had 2 sons. The older was called, do you remember the name of the older son of Abraham? Ishmael, exactly, Ishmael. And this son whose mother was called Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant. The younger was Isaac, the son of the promise, whose mother was Sarah, Abraham's wife. As a matter of fact, Ishmael, being the older, being the stronger, he was very mean and he was very cruel to his younger brother, Isaac. He persecuted Isaac to the extent that Sarah came to Abraham saying, "Cast out this bondwoman," she's talking about Hagar, "cast out this bondwoman and her son." Abraham did not like this. He did not want to do this. But God commanded him and told him, follow what Sarah told you. So he actually sent them away, and the house of Abraham was divided. where the two brothers were raised up separately. Let me ask you, and let me ask myself, how do I treat others? At home, at school, at work, even at church. How do I treat my brothers and my sisters? Do I fight and shout all the time as a matter or as a means to show my power and to gain the respect only out of fear rather than love? Or do I, as a child of Christ, who said, "Learn from me, for I am gentle," do I try to follow what St. Paul said in Ephesians 4:32? He said, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you." How do I act towards my little brothers, my little sisters, and my brethren at church? Do I behave in a Christian way or not? This is a question that we all need to answer. And this is another reason for why our houses can be divided. The first reason was jealousy, and the second reason is cruelty. Being mean to one another can divide our houses. Let us talk about the third example. Abraham, as we just said, had two sons. The younger was Isaac. Who was the wife of Isaac? Do you remember? What was her name? Huh? What was her name? Isaac's wife, Rebecca, right? Rebecca, exactly. Isaac's wife was called Rebecca. How many sons did Isaac have? He had two sons. Two sons. They were actually a twin, two brothers, but one was born first and the other was born right after. So who was born first? Esau, exactly. Esau was born first, and then who followed after Esau? Jacob, exactly. So Isaac and Rebekah, they both had a twin, two sons. The older, because he was born first, is Esau, and the younger, he was born second, that was Jacob. Yes. As a matter of fact, Rebekah loved Jacob more than Esau. But Jacob was kind of selfish, you know. He was centered upon himself. He thought only of himself. And he took advantage of his older brother. Esau was coming from work exhausted and hungry. And Esau was cooking a meal. Jacob was cooking a meal. When Esau saw the food, he was very hungry and he wanted to eat. But Jacob told him, "If you are to eat the food that I'm cooking, you have to sell me something in return." What is it? You have to sell me your birthright. The older brother in the Old Testament, in the old times, the older brother had what is called the birthright. He was to inherit 2 shares of his brothers, and after the departure of their father, he would be the master of the house. So he would be exactly replacing his father. This is a great advantage. He would take double of any of his brothers or sisters to take, and he would be the master and the ruler of the house. So Jacob told Esau, "If you are to eat of the food that I'm making," it was only a bread and a meal of lentils, stew. He told him, "You have to sell me your birthright first." And then Esau, because he was hungry, he told him, "This has no use for me. Take it. I don't need it." So Jacob took advantage of his brother. And then eventually he conspired with his mother, Jacob and Rebekah, to steal the blessings from their father, the blessings that belonged to Esau. So he did 2 things. But what happened? Esau hated Jacob and said, "I will kill my brother." He said, "I will kill my brother because of what he did. He deceived me once, and then he stole my blessings." But Jacob fled to his uncle in a far country. And You know, Esau, as a means of revenge from his parents, he rebelled against his parents, so he decided to get married to Gentile women. Gentile women were very hard to deal with, and his mother never liked them. Esau got married to 3 women. 3 at least, that's what we know of. So he was married to 3 Gentile women, none of them was a Jew, and his mother hated them. She didn't like them. And Jacob fled to a far country for over 20 years, and their house was divided. So again, this is a third reason why our homes can be divided. Selfishness. When everybody is self-centered, when everybody thinks of only himself, none of the others, our houses can be divided. The Lord mentioned a parable in Luke 16 about a rich man. A rich man living a luxurious life. He had everything. He wore fine clothing and he ate a lot of food and he lived in a big palace. But with that rich man there was a beggar. A beggar laid at his gate, a beggar who was hungry and naked. But as a matter of fact, the rich man would never help the poor or the man called Lazarus by any means. He would leave him there, just laid at his gate, and only the dogs came and licked his ulcers, his wounds. That was very painful. After a while, both died. The rich man and Lazarus, they both died. Then Lazarus' soul was comforted in the bosom of our father Abraham. But you know, the rich man, he was tormented in Hades. Why? What was the sin of that rich man? What did he do? Yes. He didn't help the beggar. He was selfish. He wouldn't even help him with the crumbs that fell off his table. He had a lot of food, and instead of giving the leftovers to the beggar to satisfy his hunger, he would throw them in the trash. Very selfish. He never considered the poor man laid at his gate. And at the end, you know, Lazarus was comforted while the rich man was tormented in Hades. So let me ask myself these few questions. Do I mind sharing my time, my effort, and even my money with those who need it? Or rather prepare everything for myself, just as did the rich man? When the food is served at home, do I go first to get the best chair or the biggest chair? Or do I just wait until the end? What happens when the food is served, especially when a meal that I love the most? Do I wait for my brothers to go first, or do I have to go first to take the biggest and the best chair? If there is only one piece of chocolate or one piece of candy left, do you mind dividing it among your brethren, or would you rather eat the whole thing for yourself? Yeah, these are the questions that we all need to answer. And this is a third reason for our houses to be divided. There are many reasons for our houses to be divided. The first we mentioned was jealousy, and the second was cruelty, and the third was selfishness. And all these are features of one big disease. That disease is called the absence of love. The absence of love. We simply don't love each other. We simply don't love God enough. If we only follow this one commandment, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Exactly. Again, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If we do this one commandment and try hard to practice even for the rest of our lives, then our homes are going to be reunited again. They will resume their unity. Our Christians' homes will be strong, will be one part, and will glorify the name of the Lord Jesus Christ forever and ever.